welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And this week we bring you another on our must-see horror list with Bog Soldiers.
Yeah. We're going... Well, this was kind of inspired by the recent rewatch of another must-see horror we did, which was 28 Days Later. So, cheap plug, but if you haven't listened to that episode, go and check it out.
We're into a little bit of a British horror kind of. These are like Bog Soldiers, 28 Days Later. It's among those. It's like of an era of, you know, when you've also got, I'd say, like Shaun the Dead or something like that.
Yeah.
When you had a little kind of resurgence of British horror, I think a big like leap forward kind of with British horror, where we were actually seen for that period of time, especially as like, oh, we're making some of the best horror content like around the world at that point in time. But I think the main reason that made me it was purely the quality of the video of what actually 28 Days looked like, and all I could think, I remember 28 Days Later and Bog Soldiers looking very similar in their like the way they're filmed and their quality of the films.
Very frantic films.
Yeah,
you know?
And we did say that. The one thing that definitely occurred to both of us was that 28 Days aged like milk in terms of the actual look of the film. Not the content of the film. We were very happy with the content of the film, but the actual look of it sadly looked like worse than an 80s episode of EastEnders.
Yeah, it was a pretty bollocks looking film. You know, it was pretty rough.
So I don't know about the copy that you watched. Like, I actually found a 4K copy of this. I didn't know. Weirdly, 28 Days Later has not been converted to 4K because I don't know what that would look like. But this film had actually been converted into the highest of modern day 4K qualities by an independent studio. So I watched that one, and actually my quality was actually it was definitely better than 28 Days Later in terms of the look of the film.
Oh, because I mean I went through Amazon Prime to watch this, so I think I had it as Neil Marshall, the director, intended, and it was not nice. It was not.
Was it not? I mean, I'm not saying I'd still say that. Like, I'd still say I can find old episodes of EastEnders that would be like around. But the difference is that I thought that 28 Days Later I mean, at some points it looked almost blurry and almost like it was so like, stretched out. Whereas at least I thought with this one, I don't know, the version at least I saw, that at least looked like it was of a watchable quality, whereas 28 Days Later, especially the first couple of scenes, I was like, I'm not actually sure whether I can watch this the way it looks.
Yeah, I feel like Bog Soldiers, just to talk about my own kind of personal relationship with this film, should I say, and before I do that, you know, I'll keep you in suspense, and I will ask that you hit that subscribe button and you please leave us a lovely review. We're coming into the spring/summer season, so we're going to bring you all sorts of fun episodes, and we want you to hit that subscribe button to get it as soon as you can. But I mean, I remember Bog Soldiers coming out, 2002, so the same year as 28 Days Later, 10 years old, thinking that this was going to be like absolutely fucking class. I still think it's got a really good cast. You've got Sean Pertwee, Liam Cunningham, Kevin McKidd. I just always had this thing where I remember watching it, and then it kind of like sunk into the back of my head. And I remember about 10 years later, everybody saying, "Well, the best werewolf film is this one, which is kind of a cult film, and it's Bog Soldiers, and it's it's incredible and it's amazing." And everybody I speak to kind of sings the praises of this film. And I think I probably watched it again about 2012, and it just sunk into my brain again. And when we said we were going to do it as an episode, I was like, am I going to have the same problems that I had with it back then?
Yeah.
And I very much do have some of the same problems. And for me, it doesn't just come down to the way in which, because it visually, I don't think it's a very nice looking film to look at, and I think it is this kind of grittiness that they try to go for. I don't know whether they're trying to.
I mean, this one's lower budget than 28 Days Later. This is about 2 million budget film. Even 20 Days Later had about 7 or 8 million, I think.
Yeah.
So like this is even lower kind of thing. Although odd, because I'd say it's got a cast that's packed with people of the time who were all probably bigger than anyone who was in 28 Days Later at that point in time. Except for maybe Brendan Gleeson or Christopher Eccleston was
Mr.
huge back then.
Well, I'd say those two, because Sean Pertwee
was big.
Was he?
Yeah,
I mean, he was
early in the
this
90s
isn't
to early 2000s.
I mean, this isn't a sly bullet at Sean Pertwee because I rate him and I think he's probably the best character of this. Event Horizon, 1997.
Yeah.
Your favourite, Leon the Pig Farmer, 1992. Cleopatra, apparently. I don't know what that is. 51st State. Equilibrium, fucking hell. Yeah, maybe he was a lot bigger than I
quite a lot of, and even why am I forgetting who the main character? Like obviously, like you said before, he came from Train Spotting. It's
Kevin McKidd.
Kevin McKidd, that's the one. Kevin McKidd. So he'd come off of things like Train Spotting. He was more kind of up and coming. Liam Cunningham was quite well known as well. Obviously, lots of people know him from Game of Thrones,
which is where because I have seen I didn't realise Liam Cunningham was in this film, so it was a kind of a pleasant surprise for me.
I even knew, was it Darren Moffat who plays Spoonie?
Yeah, Spoonie.
Spoon. I recognised him from quite a lot of stuff from my childhood of remembering him on shows and stuff like that.
Yeah, same
in terms of Brit and stuff like that. So it's not like that, but it's about leveling of I'd say around, but they're all kind of around about at the same time. Christopher Eccleston to Sean Pertwee at that point in time, probably about around kind of range of height of their knowledge and powers of what they were at that point in time. But yeah, so what the thing is, I'd say I had a fond memory of this because I remember, this was, I guess, 2002. That is literally that's probably the dawning of my true love of horror. That's probably that's not long before we were probably
before we met.
We met,
I remember my brother Dan going to see this film. I remember him coming back from the cinema and telling me.
I think I remember my brother Chris maybe snuck into this film because he was still around about that age. But I remember my brother coming back with the video of this.
Yeah.
So, and obviously back in the day, if you have a video, it's not just being watched once. You drain it of its power until that very end of the day. You've got it for 48 hours. You're watching this. You're watching it and probably then watching it again and then watching it the next day and then watching it 10 minutes before you got returned.
Yeah.
And then forgetting to rewind it or something like that.
And somebody's coming back right at the end.
Yeah, just literally someone's coming into the end of the film or something like that. But so I remember watching it multiple times and I don't know if it's because also, I'm from a Geordie background of a family and stuff like that. There's a lot of Geordie kind of northern humour in this film that kind of plays quite well, plays quite nicely with me. So I do remember and thinking I was going to come back to this and thinking that actually from what I've seen in recent years, that's going to be really that might be really terrible.
Yeah, okay.
And it was I was expecting it to be tongue in cheek, which it is, but it was. If anything, it was actually that it was more serious than I remembered actually at points. That was actually one of my more kind of I remember it being more serious at points. One thing I will say straight out of the gate that I do definitely like about it is the fact that I feel like it doesn't fuck around with the mythology, and it's one thing I just don't like that much about a lot of werewolf movies is when they go too heavy-handed into all of the mythology of the lycanthrope and all of it always bogs down the film so much.
Yeah, I think one thing that does play to the film's strengths is that it's, I'm going to read the tagline because this is basically it, but 6 men, full moon, no chance,
Yeah.
And it's basically a bunch of squaddies who go out on a training exercise and then shit hits the pan. And they've got to, shit hits the fan. It does hit the pan as well. Yeah. But they have to then just basically hunker down and survive.
Yeah.
That's what the film effectively boils down to.
And it does. I think that's kind of what play is that it has a simplicity to it. I was talking about it. It's not like there's loads to unpack here. There's almost deaths points. And there's a few twists along the way, but there's not tons of stuff to unpack here of the film. Because it is the basic of a bunch of soldiers. They come across basically werewolves and thing, and then after that they basically end up, after a couple of little events, they end up hunkered down in the middle of the house, and that's pretty much the rest of the film until we leave the house at the end. That is literally it. But there is a few obviously set-up-y parts and stuff like that. You've got at the very beginning, you've got Kevin McKidd's character, who is training for a special ops kind of group. And you've got the scene where he's basically told by Liam Cunningham's character to basically shoot the dog because in this operation you have to follow all the rules. You have to blindly follow my rules, and he's like,
I'm not shooting a dog. Yeah.
Which then kind of is a kind of theme that runs throughout as to whether that actually, like, if you followed it more correctly, would these people live more? Or would they have died? Or would it have gone a different way?
Or would he have died?
Or would have you died long ago anyway?
Yeah.
So it's those like things that do pop up. Even though it seems at the very beginning of the film it feels a bit random and after like you're coming in the middle of something and then it kind of cuts away to him in a new squad and you'll be like, what happened? Did he just already joined? Did he like what happened? Is he in that squad still? Is this the squad? There is a couple of minutes at the very beginning when you're trying to work out what exactly happened here, and then they do finally expose that actually, yes, he is now in this new group who are much lower ranking than this other group that he was previously trying to be a part of.
And I think,
and then you just get the basic setup, like a basic of the soldiers, from Sean Pertwee's to Spoonie and
I think
Joe.
Sean Pertwee is, I think he's, he does a lot of the legwork here.
He doesn't learn a lot of the scenes, yeah.
And none of the characters are particularly fleshed out. However, you get the impression that they're, a unit, and they each have their own kind of quirks and their own slight personalities. They're kind of supposed to be, just squaddies, so they're not going to have large amounts to them in terms of that. But you do get the impression that they've been together for some time. Like Spoonie is a fun character. A lot of the times their sole focus is on surviving, but they do kind of have a little bit of character to them. And I actually found that one of the strengths of the film was the character moments, when they first land and they're talking about getting the footy on, and it's all kind of like very macho. It reminded me almost of like
it's
British
lad
Predator.
It is very lad
British Predator, where they're all there and they're all like taking the piss out of each other, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna.
It's definitely got Predator in there.
Yeah, I want to watch the footy, and he's like, yeah, I'll chop off your bollocks and feed them to you, or something like that. It's this kind of like.
It's the one thing, like, what is it, the Joe character, the one thing that he's like, I'm missing the football for this.
I'm missing the football for that.
And it's like literally to even for his whole characterization to his very ends that it's kind of he gave up all of his life for the football. That was the match of his life that he gave.
That's all he wanted.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I think there's something kind of funny about that because I think, and again, knowing from people that come from like. Within my family that come from like RAF soldier kind of backgrounds, there's not always great depth. Like there is a kind of a lad thing that gets built, and there's also a kind of and not necessarily always, because I'd say there's problems in terms of mental health that comes from this. Because they are very much almost like we'll joke about things because we don't want to talk about the reality of the shit that's going down here. So it does become these very kind of surface level stuff. You can't do much to us. So there is a kind of the bullshitty kind of stuff that you get from like Joe and like Spoonie and stuff like that, or even Sean Pertwee's character, who is very much just. Like as if he's like I'd rather be at home with a lass on me and a couple of cans and watching the football. So let's get this done so we can go and do that. What I mean? There's that. I'd say that's kind of some of the fun that comes with the characterization. I think it's like the characters, although they're not exactly fleshed out in your like standard way, they're about as fleshed out as we tend to get with any. Even if we look back to like Predator, what I mean. If you lay out a lot of those characters, it's not like there's some
horrendously fleshed out.
But you know what I mean. There's like one dude shaves with a blade. One dude that's pretty much as far as it goes. It does go. One guy likes to blow the shit out of stuff. Yeah, that's pretty much as far.
This guy, he's Native American.
One guy may or not be a sexual predator. But he's not the predator we're talking about. So that instead, it's a light-hearted found.
This one is Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know him.
You know him.
You know him.
And
you don't need to know anything.
I don't need to know anything else. He's Arnold Schwarzenegger. His arms are bigger than my head.
That's all you need to know.
He is going to fight a predator at some point.
That's all you need to know. Child or alien.
He has a friend who also has arms as big as he is.
A lot of the arms are big.
Whereas in this one they all look like basically
average
if you looked at all of these men from a distance, apart from Kevin McKidd because he's ginger. I'm ginger as well, so he's the only one that stands out. The rest of them, Sean Pertwee, Joe, Spoonie, you can stand them at a distance and go, which freaking one are you? Who is who? Joe and Spoonie, especially in certain scenes of that.
Is that Joe? Head,
which one is it?
It's the shaved head.
Is that again? It's that like sometimes they like literally they've got different. Like the only way Sean Pertwee is easily recognisable is because he has a beanie on.
Yeah,
the dude in the teeny weeny beanie is the
and it's Sean Pertwee. You know? So,
that's who it is.
It's Sean Pertwee's kind of so distinct. There's, we get this kind of, we get Liam Cunningham then has like an off-screen attack, and what I do like,
which did seem like a bit. I remember
it
watching
seemed
it
like
is he dead already? I was like,
I thought that as well.
But it's not so much of a twist so much as it is just like well, that seemed like a waste of time.
Yeah. Well, I thought
at the time, obviously.
Yeah. But we get it does kind of fly through it quite quickly. Very soon, the main squad find this special forces that they're supposed to be kind of having a skirmish against.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, some shit's gone down. We need to get their weapons that are actually live ammo. And then they find Liam Cunningham, who's all kind of shit up, and he's scratched up, and a
body flies through not a body, but like an animal like flies in front of them.
And it's all very quickly that the werewolves are on them. And what I do like is they keep the werewolves pretty off screen and just flashes for a little while. We get the guy who fucking runs into a tree
until they're fully invade like the house. They're mainly like you're getting. It's not that you're not seeing them, but you're getting like shots, side shots, headshot. You're not getting to see them in like full form. You're seeing like arms coming at them and stuff like that.
Or if you do see them, because there's a ferry, the guy kind of runs into a branch.
Yeah,
I
love that.
I love that. Yeah,
that death was imprinted on my brain. There are 2 deaths in this film that I was like, oh shit.
I know one. Yeah.
I know that someone's going to run into a tree. Although in my brain I remembered it being at night, not during the day. So for some reason I remembered all of the death scenes in this being at night. His and Spoonie's death are the 2
Those
deaths
are the 2 that stick with me.
Stuck in my head.
But he kind of, the man who runs into the tree, I forgot the name, he gets, he kind of does have the off screen, you see like a hand or like a paw, I should say, scratch him, and then Sean Pertwee's guts gets ripped out, and I was thinking, fuck, are we getting Sean Pertwee dead here as well?
So
Liam Cunningham and him, but it's not. But I think that's when we get our first. It's like a full body shot of the werewolf, but it's a snap, so it's kind of like
it's really quick.
But and this is where like I find that, and a lot of I do get the problems with the film for me come, and it was the same with 28 Days Later, but it's when we get action in this, and I'm not sure if they're trying to disguise the smaller budget because it's only 2.3 million, so it's not massive. The box office was 5 million, so it just clawed back its budget. Maybe it had a bit of marketing, it might have broken even, but this is where I find, for me, the film kind of suffers with, and it is probably trying to disguise the smaller budget, but when they get first attacked by the werewolves, we get these shots of them like running through these woods and just shooting at kind of everything behind them, and you get the occasional shot of a kind of werewolf in the woods and stuff like that, or the head, and like you said, it's all very like quick shots. But there's a shot of like Spoonie, and he's like running, and like behind him he's just like pointing the gun and shooting. And I think there's either like no music, or there's this really kind of like just kind of out of place, nondescript soundtrack, and it just made it feel really kind of cheap, and it made it feel like you're watching them go, just run and just shoot behind you, and we're going to edit in like a werewolf like falling down or jumping up, And you get a lot of this kind of throughout the film, and particularly during the action shots later when they do get to the house, where it's almost just like a really quick jarring shot of somebody moving, and it feels, for me, I'm watching it and I'm like, I can't place where anything's happening. It's something that I just really struggle with the film.
Okay, I mean, I do get like some of that. It definitely is the movement around there, the large amount of like wide shots of just people like running into them. I mean, it's partially played into the plot as well, because they have got the whole like, as in like, stop wasting bullets. You guys are just like going off the handle like madmen. They kind of put that kind of part into it. Things that guys, we've been like due to like fear and stuff like that, we've just been like shooting like absolute madmen, kind of playing into that again.
Yeah, maybe.
Predators.
Maybe into the Predators.
When the like the whole like that one scene where they literally waste like basically what should have been all of their ammo.
Yeah,
it's not in that film, but in this one, they actually somewhat at least make accountable for it and go, actually, we absolutely fucking. We absolutely wasted an assload of goddamn bullets back there. We haven't really got anything left to shoot the werewolves now because you guys fucking ran through the woods shooting like mad. Like I think it kind of just basically the fact that I think oddly they're playing into that kind of. I felt like they were playing into that kind of like. They're so scared that they are just shooting like wildly, and they're not actually really paying attention. They even have it in a few scenes, literally, and it doesn't matter which one it is. Because even Kevin McKidd's character, literally, like one point, just blasts through a mailbox once they're inside the house. He's literally just blasting out for it. It's like you literally just—I swear, you're one of the ones that said we need to reserve ammo, guys, like that. And then it's like literally only like a few minutes later when he's like. Single shots, guys, or something like that kind of thing. It's like not like blasting it, but then he's like.
I think it's the execution for me. Yeah, it's the execution feels almost like very like GCSE level, like directing and shooting, which is weird to say because Neil Marshall, who directed this, and I believe this was his directorial debut.
It was,
and he did Hellboy. 2019.
This was the odd thing for me. So like we've said about it. So this is our must-see horror episode to remind you again. So this is like again the list of top 100 horror films that is from a random Amazon. This is the peak of the peak. This isn't like the BFI cinema or like some. This is Jeff
Bezos' own 100.
Yeah, it's 100 off of Amazon that someone made up and went, here you go. And it has some very questionable choices on there. It has some random Netflix films from the last year, but it also is very Americanized. So it has quite a lot of maybe cult classics in America that a lot of people over here would say, that's not, I wouldn't say, an absolute classic. Yeah. It might be something you grew up in your childhood watching on like an American TV all the time. So you're like, that's a classic. Not quite to all the rest of the world. Yeah. We'd have plenty of these ones over here. For instance, this was probably ran on Channel 5 in the UK for goddamn how many years.
It was on a lot. ITV4.
Yeah, it's like Shaun of the Dead. ITV2 ran that into the goddamn ground.
They got the license.
I never want to see that film again for a very long time.
They got the license for it and just went, we're fucking putting this on every Sunday at 9 o'clock.
Every goddamn day.
at 9 o'clock and 1 a.m. on a Sunday. It
ran that long until they found Despicable Me. and then they ran that into and they just ran that, and that was already in the ground. So it's just turning. But yeah, Neil Marshall. So, the weirdest thing for me is the fact that his directorial debut is Dog Soldiers, which I would say is much closer to the films that he's made in the majority of his films. Doomsday, Hellboy. I've seen Hellboy. It wasn't good. It was a Hellboy film made on a way lower budget than what Guillermo del Toro had, but it also had none of the style, the intro. It had a fucking terrible scene which had what's his name, Ian something. I can't remember.
The one who plays Bilbo Baggins.
No, not Ian Holm. It's the one that was in what's that cowboy series? Deadwood or what? Deadwood, I think it was. Anyway,
I think I know who you're on about.
Anyway, I'm sure anyone who has seen the film knows. But literally, I had this terrible CGI moment when he's made like this. He has like the body of him, but the bottom of his like some kind of weird ghostly worm thing, and it looked fucking terrible. It's like some of the worst CGI I've ever seen in my life. And that was only made. It wasn't made that many years ago, but it was terrible. I know low budget, but then there's low budget, and then there's scenes where you're like, just don't do this. Just don't do it. Show him face. Pretend that there's a worm body. It would be better than actually CGIing something that looks so dog shit. Yeah. But generally, I would say the films that Neil Marshall has gone on to make, I would say are like scraping the barrel of like what would be good like action horror kind of things.
Okay, interesting.
I do think that most of his films are not like, there's a stylization to the way that he makes a lot of these films that just, if you watch the trailer, like in my head it's like a British Paul Thomas Anderson.
Really?
Have I just said the wrong person?
You mean Paul W.S. Anderson?
We had this last time.
We did.
Paul Thomas Anderson is a very acclaimed director.
Yeah.
Paul W.S. Anderson is a dog shit director who made Resident Evil.
But he's banging Mila Jokovic.
Yeah, I mean that's the difference. I don't know. Sorry, Neil Marshall. I don't know who you're banging, but you ain't bang. I'm not sure if you're banging Mila Jokovic.
No, he was born in Newcastle upon Tyne. If you are interested. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I love the fact that he is a very British director and he's quite an outspoken director. But it is a case of, I would say of his films, the first two films that he made were probably the best of anything that he's made.
Well, he did The Descent, which fucking banged.
And that was my other thing, is the fact that he made this and made The Descent, which I would just say style from the rest of his career. The Descent stands out as a film that is almost so different than the rest of his films. Look, style, anything like that. It's so odd that he went on to make that one when that is top 100. That is an absolutely incredible
banging.
That is a truly, and I don't care who says about that. The original UK version is the superior one, 100%. There never should have been any more than that. Not that there's anything wrong. The sequel's fine, but it has no reason to exist. But I just remember seeing people online fighting for the fact that actually, the US one really should be because it gives a more satisfying conclusion and affair. I was like, nah, fuck no.
He also apparently did 2 episodes of Game of Thrones, which was Blackwater, and The Watchers on the Wall, which were both 2 incredible episodes of Game of Thrones. So it's really interesting.
I'd say his style matches very well to get something like Game of Thrones and things like that. I can see him directing in that.
Well, I haven't seen what else he's done, so.
But again, it's not like he hasn't made an absolute mega hit, so he's not he's not getting the budgets of a lot of these other ones. So for what he has had budget wise, he's made a nice array. It's just sadly they always end up feeling a little bit underwhelmed, cheap.
I think I actually have watched Doomsday. Now looking at it, is it where? Yeah, it's the kind of film. A little bit of a tangent where Scotland's been wiped out.
I've not watched it all the way through. The bits I have seen of it, I just thought looked terrible.
It's kind of like a weird Mad Max.
Apocalyptic Mad Max. It's like his version of Mad Max, basically.
Yeah, I remember it being not particularly great.
It's really so. It was just a weird. I just think he's not. I don't think he is always or it's not necessarily I think sometimes his visuals can actually be really nice and he makes some good choices, but he often is writer-director, and I just don't think the writing always stands up to the director. The plus side with something like The Descent is the fact that it doesn't actually have to have a lot in terms of dialogue and stuff. It's not the tons. The terror came mainly from the cave,
the claustrophobia,
and the quick shots. But again, he seems to have learned a lot from this film for that film in terms of showing creatures to a certain amount, not overdoing it, things like that. And that is when, with that one though, he perfected it a lot more than he is with this one, where sometimes it's too much and sometimes it's very little.
Well, I don't know, because I feel like one thing that does go in the film's stead is that you have practical werewolves. I think regardless of your thoughts on the film, I think that the werewolves do actually look good. They look kind of quite terrifying. And this is, I've said this before on the podcast, but early kind of 2000s, we had the unfortunate Prisoner of Azkaban werewolves, where they're not really bipedal wolves. They're just hunched on all fours, skinny greyhound dog things. You know? And they I think I remember Underworld kind of trying to reinvent the werewolf and not having them kind of. What I want a werewolf. They
had them quite practical in that one, but I think so.
I thought they had the wiry,
the early ones,
fucking shit beast in there. Because I remember they had it in quite a lot of films.
I remember Underworld did have them, because Underworld is why I don't always like practical ones, because they just looked. I think they looked shit. Whereas in this one, I actually think yes, I know you can tell that it is a fake kind of thing. But one thing I do like about it is they've got it on all legs. They've chosen people with quite a kind of slender build for the bodies.
Yeah.
So the way that they look kind of thing, they look quite intimidating when they're coming towards you. I think it's also because he's not overcomplicated. He's kept it quite simple.
Yeah.
It's long body parts with arms, claws at the bottoms. The head is the main thing that really makes you think of a werewolf. But it looks like a wolf man's hybrids, not
Yeah.
some kind of four-legged where it's basically just a standard wolf that's just standing on two legs.
Yeah, and
It looks like that kind of, which is what a lot of ones that we did get post Harry Potter.
Yeah, which was
and Twilight.
Dog shit bad. But effectively, you know, once because they bump into some random woman in a Land Rover whose name escapes me right now, Megan, a zoologist, and she's like, I just happen to be here. I know this old abandoned house in the middle of nowhere. Let me take you there. And already you're thinking, okay, pal, I know where this is going. And they basically find out that they're being attacked by werewolves. They don't bother the whole like, oh no, we're not. It can't be werewolves.
They get to that pretty.
They briefly
They briefly try to be like, nah, most of the guys are, but they get to it pretty quick, and especially once they're fixing up Sean Pertwee's, once they have to like literally glue his stomach back together. But when they get that attack inside there, they're like, you can't really deny this, guys. Look, they're goddamn look at them, they're goddamn werewolves.
Yeah.
We've got a few scenes. I generally like the scene once they're into the house. A lot of those scenes work quite well when they're trying to get inside and they're attacking through the windows and stuff like that. Well, I think those ones do. It's just it is a case of it does go on for a while. It goes on quite long.
And my frustrations, if I'm like furious at the film, but my problems with the film do come to these incidences of when they're kind of attacking, because you do get some really good shots, and it feels like the shots that are slower and more measured feel better when you see a werewolf burst through a window and somebody is like approaching it and shooting it, or when somebody is running at a door and they close it and you see the arm through. Those kind of stuff feel good, but then you just get these really like jarring shots of like Joe or Spoons just like shooting, and then it's just them, and they've just got the camera trapped on them, but it doesn't feel like they're shooting at anything. And then it's just very frantic, and then it'll be like just a screeching noise and somebody turning and shooting. And for me, I kind of feel like maybe if they'd have stuck with showing it and then shooting and then having them do a bit more action, like the good bits are when they're in motion and the camera's not fucking cutting here, there. They're blocking windows. They're trying to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And when it's just jumping around, I just get the impression that they're like not shooting at anything, and the guns that they have aren't weapons. They're just like fucking paintball guns. It takes away a lot of the tension for me, because I'm just watching an actor
people
shooting at stuff that's not there. It kind of
I guess so. I mean, I think it does come to like, I think in terms of when I say of something like this again, which is something that does require more prosthetics, more kind of more practical effects for the budget that they're making this on. I think there's some things. I think that this is a stronger made kind of one than a lot of the ones you would get for around about the same price tag.
Potentially.
And I think a lot of that then has to be accountable for the fact, when you've got a werewolf's arm coming through the window and that's mainly all you're getting to see, it's kind of like, well, I know why that's happening, because we can't really afford... we can't constantly kind of show. And we're also trying to make it constantly look like there are tons of werewolves when they probably are like, we can't really afford to have actual tons of werewolves. So we have to time it so it looks like at this scene there's 2 in a room, in this scene there's 3, but actually you can see them downstairs. But it's really probably just the same one that's being, not always, but the same 3 or 4 that they've got that are being used to make it look like a whole...
Well, it's supposed to be a family, isn't it? It's only supposed to be 4 or 5 werewolves.
Yes, and that is a twist that is revealed, that it is a family, not a and that comes in with the whole Megan, isn't it? That Megan is part of the family that is within this house, and that they have been bringing people, and it also links into the twist of Mr. Liam Cunningham's Captain Ryan, who gives this big reveal. I don't know why the one character that I just couldn't really get along was Liam Cunningham's Captain Ryan. I don't know why. He's the standard kind of private captain thing.
I'm not telling you nothing.
I don't know why though. Out of everyone, like his his tone, the way that he's acting, I just felt weirdly out of place from all the other actors. I know he's meant to feel like he is the upper, he is above them, he's better than them, he's things like that. But I don't know why. There was certainly, I've seen him in plenty of things I'm absolutely fine with his style of acting. It just was something about him just was like, I just don't feel like you're gelling. I'm not enjoying what you're doing here. I'm not enjoying what you're telling me. And you are here purely as you are the exposition man. That is the only reason you exist still in this film, is to be exposition, to tell us the backstory about how the special forces, you were sent here in order to capture one of these werewolves, to find out more about them, blah, blah, blah. It all went wrong, blah, blah, you've got your guys down in the basement that have all been used for, caught by this family, she's caught you, oh shit, she's a werewolf, which is a good, her being a werewolf I think works fairly well, because
that works well,
the signs are not greatly there, I would say. Yes, it's weird that she's out in the middle of nowhere, she's the one to find them. But generally, it's not like a huge, it's not something you're looking for, I don't think. No. I completely forgot about that twist. So when it comes, it was quite like, oh, okay. This is quite good to have built, the final act kind of thing.
Yeah, I remembered it, but I remember thinking it kind of worked.
Yeah. Whereas Cunningham, Liam Cunningham's turning into the werewolf suddenly, which again seemed very obvious that was coming because we knew he'd got scratched. So I was waiting for, when are these guys going to become werewolves? That was one scene when I was there
Well, I think the thing with Liam Cunningham is I think he's a better actor than the role he's given, I feel like he's supposed to be kind of very straight-laced, not really, very stoic, and not going to talk, and not going to give information.
Yeah.
And I think he's just too good an actor for what he's got, so it feels kind of wooden and it feels a bit out of place. That's my thoughts.
I don't know. I think it was the same stuff I've seen him do several times as an actor. And
I've seen
him do lots of interesting things in different
forms.
He's great
in Game of Thrones.
But it was the Game of Thrones is slightly different. But I've seen him in other major, sergeant, general kind of, and it's always the same tone of which I just don't know if he just doesn't enjoy doing them.
Maybe because I didn't.
But it's just a bit it is the what he's being asked to read is not exactly Shakespeare. You know what I mean? It is that kind of level of but I think a good actor finds a way to make I think the rest of the actors are finding a way to make this work.
But I think the rest of the actors have more to do because they're almost allowed to freak out and allowed to act, whereas for the most part he's tied to a chair and then he's kind of well, I'm not going to tell you anything. No, you're not to
it's just a lot. I think it's not even necessary. It's just I do think you're right in terms of the story. In terms of he's just a part that half the time you forget he even.
He's there.
You forget why he's actually still here because they've just literally attacked upstairs. Shouldn't one of them have eaten him by now?
Yeah, he's just tied in a chair.
He's just still there. So I think it is more of it's a loose end in the script there, where it's almost at one point it felt like I was like, when did he die? Oh shit, he didn't die. Oh, he's still there.
He's still there.
But weren't they in the house? They were downstairs. No,
bullets flying everywhere.
They've not got him. All right. And now he's a werewolf, and now he's jumped out the window, and we'll see him in the final act.
What did you think of his transformation?
The yellow eyes into the
hands.
The hands. I thought that was all right.
I quite liked it because
simple again. It wasn't overcomplicated. It wasn't trying to be
and it was within.
I have to start showing his face within a thing. No, it's the eyes go, the hands. It felt a bit reminded me a bit of Thriller.
Yeah,
we're not showing a full transformation. We're just going with the yellow eyes and the hands.
And the
next
duck
time
down.
you see him, he'll have a prosthetic head.
Yeah, and it was weird because I was wondering what they were going to do because I knew he was going to change, but I forgot that he changes. If that makes sense, I forgot that his character was even in it, and I was wondering how are they going to do it because the movie doesn't really, as far as I could tell, doesn't really have any CGI in it.
No.
So I wasn't expecting the kind of Van Helsing CGI transformation, but then when you're watching a werewolf transformation, when you're watching a werewolf film, the transformation is that's what gets you hard. That's what you want to see. You're thinking The Howling, you're thinking an American Werewolf in London, you're thinking all these iconic changes.
Yeah.
But they're fucking massive budgets, and you're thinking how are they going to do it? So I liked the way in which they did it. I think given the budget constraints, I liked that you see the subtle changes in the hands, you see the eyes, he falls back and it scrapes, and then it kind of shows the other people, and then he just bolts up.
Yeah,
as the
smashing through a window.
Smashing through a window. I quite liked it, you know.
Yeah, no, I think it was. Well, I mean, you've got that. I knew you were never going to get the classic kind of full transformation.
No, of course.
Which can work and sometimes doesn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
An American Werewolf is kind of my peak in my head of like what that could look like.
That's awesome.
In terms of that's amazing. But yeah, I think it's a nice simple approach here. Like I think that's some of the things that makes it interesting for me is that kind of the way that some scenes have been created in order to show, you know, even when it's explosions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like you said, like this is before like an easily available, you know, 2002 is still on that kind of, you know, a lot of the big studios are using CGI, but the lower budget stuff is they ain't touching it yet unless they've got people in the know kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it is a completely kind of purely practical film. And it is quite nice looking back at some of those films and be like, this is completely, so what are they achieving on what they've got kind of thing. For a first director, I think, and achieving what he does in terms of effects and guts and stuff like that, and making it look real enough.
Oh yeah,
and making you feel for enough for the characters for some of them. Some of them are more throwaway. Some of them you really do. You know, you've got the one, but I think it's Terry who gets like dragged through the window in the first attack.
Yeah,
you know.
But then you see his death in the barn, which is good, where he's kind of still alive and being eaten. And then his head's ripped off. That's a good one.
Yeah.
And then
what's that like? He's like werewolves, and then he calls them like werewolf, more like, you know, whatever they are, pussies or whatever, and then gets dragged through the window.
Yeah, that's good.
Which is, you know, that's the porn parody. Pussy soldiers.
Pussy soldiers. It's just them fucking. And then you get the guy who gets killed in the back of the Jeep. That's a good
Joe when he that one's quite cool because obviously they're setting up the explosion, aren't they, to try and divert away from them to kind of get their attention away. So they try to blow up the barn because that's when he sees Terry in there.
Yeah,
and then he like backs up and then he's in there and he's like, "Come on, you bastard!" Like basically just dives into the back like him. Well,
the good thing about it is they never kind of steer away from that thing of the squaddies being like, we're gonna fight because they're trained to fight. Even though they're a bit rough and ready, none of them kind of lose their bottle, and none of them are like desserts. None of them. They're all like, "Oh, I'm just gonna fucking take on a werewolf."
Yeah, they never just giving up or like. There's no one man who's like, "I'm legging it. I'm off. I'm done, mate." Like, I mean, I guess the guy at the start,
guy in the tree,
the guy in the tree legs it at the start, but. Then again, you know, I'm not saying that when you first see a werewolf, it's not the first, but all the rest of the guys, they know what situation they're in. They know this by now. So, like, fuck it, we're going down to the final.
We'll just go for it.
And that's why I kind of like that kind of, like, it's got that oddly, you know, British, like, bravado, that kind of...
Just go for it.
Go for it. Just do it, man. I'm the fucking... So whether it's jumping into the back of there or the one that, you know, once we've had that transformation. And I think for most people, the saddest death is Spoon. Because he fucking goes for it.
He does.
I mean, I love some of his scenes earlier, like when he gets the sword and he's just like, I'm going to fucking...
Yeah, Spoon's a good character, man. And you get this, like the fight that he does have with the werewolf is great. You know, the werewolves come back for like another attack. And Megan reveals herself to have been part of the family and
this is kind of the final... This is like the final, that big like fight. Right?
Yeah, this is the final big one.
This is when they're all like upstairs, downstairs. They're all around the house spread out. Sean Pertwee's actually got his body back, like actually
he's
glued back together.
Healed.
So now he can actually kick ass.
Now
he gets a couple of cool scenes in that kind of thing. But Spoons is the one that, like, while Kevin McKidd's character and Sean Pertwee's are upstairs, kind of like fighting them off as they're coming up through the windows. He's downstairs, pretty much left by himself with the dog to just kind of fight out one of the werewolves. Him versus the one werewolf to begin with.
Yeah, and it's great because you're rooting for him, and he's fucking, you know,
he knocks one of its teeth out, he like kicks it in the side, you know,
and
he's getting stabbing it out. You think that. You do think at certain points you're like, this werewolf could have just literally chopped, like, could have taken a big fight at you by this point. But the werewolf seems to be a little bit into the fight. Like, I'll use my ants. Let's do this. Let's box it.
And I really like it. This is we're saying the moments that stuck in our head from when we watched it.
Yeah.
And Spoon's death was one of those moments.
Yeah.
But even during this, there were these shots where he's just like throwing punches at the air. And there's ones where he's throwing plates. Yeah. Where you're not seeing him throw plates at anything. And you're just like, You're just throwing a plate. And for me, it really just undercuts the tension. I don't know what it is, and I know they're doing it for the budget, obviously. Yeah. But especially when you see him punch
it's easier to him throw stuff if no one's on the other side.
Exactly.
So you have to do stunts, basically.
They have to do stunts. And I want him to assault a man in a wolf costume.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because that scene is great. And he's stabbing it and all the blood's kind of
I love that when it's splattering all around the room and he's just fucking going for it. It's like in his face and his mouth. He's just like, fucking, no, I'm going to fucking go. And then, I remember being a kid. This is one I remember like sticking out because I remember being devastated when the other one walks in and fucking pins him against the wall.
Yeah.
And then what's his line about I hope I fucking like give you it's like indigestion or something.
Yeah, I hope I give you the shits.
I hope I give you the shits. Yeah, I hope I give you the shits. You fucking. And then it leads in, and then it's the fact that the next time you see him, it's just a pile of guts.
Nothing.
It's a pile of guts.
It's so gross.
Which I'm actually even more in like, why didn't they eat the guts? Like those look like delicious guts.
Yeah.
You ate the bone and the skin,
not the
but
guts.
you didn't eat the guts.
Yeah, you just gobbled them
that's
up.
normally the bit they want to gobble out of them.
Yeah.
And his watch is in the middle of it, and you're just like, fuck it. I remember being a kid and actually being like, proper like, fuck, I'm devastated by that one.
Yeah.
I thought he was still going to pull off a last minute something, or someone was going to walk in, but no. He's just there, and the dog's just sat there like, oh fuck, I'll eat them.
I think we were all spoiled by Dewey, where like, the lovable character gets stabbed like 12 times. He's fine. Don't worry about him.
I'd say in a lot of British horror, we never go that way with it. We never have that, there's the nice lovable guy. It's like, fuck him.
Yeah, we never really
He's dead. Do. Even like a comedy like Shaun the Dead, the Ed character or something lovable, some people hateable in some ways, but still he's that character. It's like, he still ends up being a zombie. He gets an ending, but he's technically a dead person living inside the shed.
Living in the shed. Like,
we never quite go for that. We're quite more into the darker ending, whereas I'd say, well, I guess The Descent is a perfect example of maybe in other countries they feel that they I'm not saying they can't handle it. I'm saying that studios seem to believe they can't handle
it. They mollycoddle
that. You know what I mean? The amount of deaths in film that we've missed out on because it like the classic of Adam Sandler's Click.
Oh yeah.
Where in the original cut he was meant to die, but apparently all the test audiences turned around and went, that's
really dark.
That's the ending. Yeah,
you can't kill Adam Sandler.
In the comedy Click, Adam Sandler really wanted it to die at the end of it, so he went for his whole life and basically wasted his entire life and died.
Well, I remember watching it, and he.
And there's lots of films like that, by the way. There's lots of versions of that in my head going through. For some reason, Click was the one that came into my head.
Because I remember watching it, and I remember like him dying.
Yeah, that scene was basically his death.
And I remember thinking,
happy ending.
I remember thinking, oh wow, that's like a really good kind of heartfelt, moving Adam Sandler movie. And then they're like, actually, it's fine. Just don't take things for granted.
Yeah. Which is a lovely message. I'm not saying in that case that actually would have been a better ending to just be like, so he wastes his entire life and then he just dies. Well, the message is, don't waste your life, audience. You've just seen it happen. You need to walk away with that message. But instead of be like, it's fine because someone always fixes it. Because that's the American way.
So you can do whatever you want.
You can do whatever you want, and
Christopher Walken will always fix it.
Yeah,
he'll always fix it.
That's how I lead my life.
Yeah,
Christopher Walken. I can do whatever I want. I can steal. I can
kill a man.
Whatever I want. Christopher Walken will save me.
He will save me. Back to the last two, which is obviously.
I love the scene when they go. They're like, I can't actually remember why there was what was the skeleton inside of the. There was a skeleton. They go inside the wardrobe. They're like, we're gonna have to get in the wardrobe. I'm not quite sure why that's the best choice in the world. I didn't really understand the reasoning for that because I was like, you're just boxing yourself in. You're literally just serving yourself up like a goddamn, like when I opened my goddamn McDonald's and go, there is in the box. That's
you.
For the well.
That's you.
But there's like a dead animal or so. I think it's an animal. Then it looks like a skull.
I think it's a body, isn't it?
Someone's hidden in there until they died, basically.
I think maybe
that was explained. I think I might have missed it. I feel like one of the family members may have hidden or something and then just died.
Yeah, something
got locked in a cupboard,
Somebody's locked in a cupboard.
But when they shoot through the floor, his little moment there is pretty cool. And then obviously, once they see Spoonie's death, but that's also when he starts changing. Because he got sliced earlier, and it turns out the effect is now kicking in. Which timeline makes sense because again, Liam Cunningham's character, he did, he got a few hours before them that happened, and then it happened. So a few hours later, suddenly we've got him changing. So, and he goes out in classic movie kind of, he's in charge. He keeps saying, like, these are my men,
these are my men
in this situation.
That's a direct order.
Yeah, that's it.
In his Sean Pertwee accent.
His
Sean
Pertwee from?
He's 100%. He's 100. Where was he? Hammersmith, London. Yeah, he was son to the actor John Pertwee, who played the third Doctor. So he's a Nepo baby.
He's a Nepo baby.
He's been outed as a Nepo baby.
He's one of the earliest Nepo babies.
He's one of the originals.
So if Sean Pertwee has a job right now, fire him.
Yeah, fire him.
He should be cancelled.
Cancel him. Nepo babies. His relative Roland Pertwee was also an English playwright, film and television.
So he just had it served onto a plate. I could be an actor too if I had many generations of classic actorial family.
You could be. I'm just reading about Sean Pertwee now. However, his wife gave birth to twins in 2001.
That directly correlates to he had a child just before he made this film. So,
he also presented
while he was making this
party political broadcast on behalf of the Labour Party in the 2010 UK general election.
There you go. So he supported. We're making a picture of him.
Making a picture of who the man is. He was also in Howl, which is another often they say underrated. Werewolf film. I would actually say Howl's a better film than this if you're asking me.
There we go.
But back to Mr. Sean Pertwee's sacrifice.
I mean, he basically just sets up the whole room, the cooker and stuff like that for the gas to go off while they try to attract in all the werewolves so that he can go a big old boom. He sends old Kevin McKinnon the dog down to the basement. Yeah. Which I in my head, I've got to be honest though. One thing is, you can go down into a cellar. But the level of explosion that happens above is not, I believe, going to save you from that.
Probably not. But also might trap you in.
Yeah, it literally looks as if that house then collapses down on top of him. So he is now trapped inside his burning.
And he has to eat the dog.
All of that burning is not just going to go, it's nicely laid on top. No, it keeps burning.
Yeah.
And the smoke and level of that, I feel, would have just like
cooked him.
It's literally like, but the level of explosion they go, which again, practical effect wise, it's an amazing explosion. It's really cool. When their Woolworth come back in and Sean Pertwee turns on that cooker and boom, and you're like, this is a classic little heroic kind of sacrifice. Fantastic. But all I could think about was, goddamn, that house is about to level down on that dude's head and he's just about to get crushed and
crushed.
Just crushed down. Like, he just looks at the dog and then all you hear is,
The best case scenario, the dog dies and its meat is smoked and he just eats it and just lives under there
while he's trapped inside a little like smoke based house.
Yeah, and or it smokes all of the bodies and he just eats them.
It's just the way that the fire and the explosion is so mega. It is huge.
Yeah, it's mega.
The whole fire literally engulfs the entirety of the entire building as it goes up. So all you can be is like, some of that fire's coming down. That it doesn't just like go up because heat rises. Like no, it spreads when that level of propulsion is kicked into it. Like that looks like a level of leaving like a nice hole in the ground.
Yeah,
that didn't fucking work, did it? Just the end of the film is just show a ditch in the bottom. Of the
no doubt.
That's it.
Well, how did Ryan get in there? Because it's implied Ryan is obviously. I'm reading the names now, but it's obviously Mr.
Well, you've got all the bodies down in the basement, haven't you? When you first go in the cellar when it goes down there.
But there's only, I think there's
a lot
only
of those
one way in and
special ops guys, because they've all got that's where a lot of them are.
But that makes sense.
It's like he went back to his special ops team. Like he went underneath, but
you have to be inside the house to go underneath.
But they get out of the house and they go through it.
They come out.
Yeah, I don't know.
Through the way they came in.
When all the rest of the werewolves were walking towards the people, he must have been just going down to the cellar. Which,
that's what I
mean. Just all the other werewolves were on attack mode, and apparently he again has more intelligence than the rest of the werewolves, and just decided I'm going to go down to the cellar.
I don't get how he got down there because it's implied
because they need to have a fight at the end.
Yeah,
which
that's
again,
literally
just like Ryan's character, the rest of the film. That could have never happened, and I would have not remembered that there was meant to be a Brian werewolf. Literally just that, and it's not like he does much because I mean, I think he's partially injured the werewolf. he's got like a slight stake or something like into him or something. But
He's got the sword in him.
Oh yeah, the sword in him.
Yeah.
Of course he has. He's got the sword in him.
I mean, the bit where he tries to put the sword through
that bit's bad. That
mouth
was really cool.
and it's scraping the teeth.
That
That's
was
fucking
uncomfortable
wrong.
to watch.
Yeah, that was.
And also, it did look really good. I thought, like the way it was, like literally the
Yeah.
way they obviously were literally just scraping circle across.
It's like, we're just going to shatter the enamel on your teeth.
We're just going to literally just stroke. We're going to break through.
We're going to break your teeth, but it'll look cool.
It's like in American History X
Yeah.
when Edward Norton crushed that guy's skull on the pavement.
Yeah.
And then the director said, "You know that was just meant to be a stunt."
Yeah, he's just dead.
He's dead.
That man is dead.
He really killed that man.
He really killed him.
And Kevin McKidd really got a sword scraped through his teeth.
Yeah.
Same levels of commitment there.
But yeah, and then he uses the letter opener, the silver letter opener.
Yes,
from the couple who died at the start of the film.
I skipped to the second scene at the beginning when I said the opening of the film. I forgot the random scene of the couple together who gave which just felt completely just like, in the long scheme of things, looking back at it, the reason I forget it is because it seems somewhat like only there in order to set up one silver letter opener. And
that's
pretty
literally
much
it.
Apart from that, and we don't even get full on kill scene. We get like a girl,
It's off camera
wife
kill.
who's like, her guts get kind of somewhat ripped apart, so she's like, he gets blood splattered into there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only real setup in the film, though, isn't it? It's just that.
Yeah, that's it. You get like them talking about it. They say like, oh, there was a couple here who died or who went missing, a couple of weeks ago, and that loads of people come walking through this area. Not all of them make it out, and I do like these bits that are like peppered throughout before the werewolves come. But it does feel like they're just.
It's purely to be like, this is a horror film. We need to open with something more horror style.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, the next two scenes that follow this are very unhorror. You know what I mean? The two military kind of scenes are very like, this isn't really horror. So I get it. It needs something at the beginning to give you a little bit of a gore, a little bit of it teases the idea of the werewolves a little bit more. If you didn't go to a film called Dog Soldiers that has about werewolves on the poster, and then you don't know you're in a werewolf film, then now you may know that you're at least in a monster film of some kind.
Somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he blasts the shit through Cunningham head.
Yeah, he just when he stabs him. And
the actor Liam Cunningham.
Yeah.
We've gone back and forth between Captain and Cunningham, but we just get a hole through the head, and then that's it. It's time to walk out the door, and the building's burnt down, and game over.
Yeah,
and then we do get the kind of somewhat comical of the pictures.
Yeah,
that were in the camera. Because obviously Sean Pertwee's kind of said, you can prove it with this, take that, it's got the flash on it, we've all been taking pictures, we can prove it. And you get a nice montage of the pictures, which are quite nice, and then it's got the kind of jokey bit where it goes to a tabloid newspaper, and it's England 5, Germany 1, and below that is like a Sun-style newspaper where it's like, my troop was eaten by werewolves. Yeah. And you're just like, they're taking this all very seriously. Like, this is exactly it. Like, you could post any of this. This could really happen to you and be like, that doesn't sound real. No, we ain't going to believe you.
Yeah.
It's a UFO style.
Which I quite like,
Loch Ness. I like that bit at the end. Probably the score of the football match is the most unbelievable thing in the film at that point.
At that point in time. We'd have been stomped by German, and as we pretty much have been ever since.
Consistently.
Yeah.
But, it's a fun little kind of tease at the end of that, and it's a film that never got, it was still deemed as a success. It was well reviewed film. A lot of people thought they'd get a sequel, a couple of sequels. They tried to.
I'm just reading about that now. They were originally going to have a sequel, Dog Soldiers, Fresh Meat, and it was going to start shooting in 2004. It's going to have a 35-day shoot with a budget of $5.5 million. The directors were Andy Armstrong, who was a second unit director on Hellbound, Hellraiser 2 and Nightbreed. Eric Miller had written the script, and Private Cooper was due to come back, and it was going to be about like an American squad who was supposed to be the actual enemies of Cunningham's kind of unit in this, but they were actually werewolves all along. So
Yeah.
It was
so it was
supposed
going to be
to be
against an actual, like, as if...
like a military team of werewolves. Yeah.
And they were going to imply that they had some kind of that knowledge, like they still
By
worked
training and
more
worked
as a team, like
yeah.
they did in there. It's not, you know. I was kind of surprised that film like this, a little underrated, that no one tried to go, oh yeah, we're going to make. Or even to be honest, even like the Neil Marshall, as his career's gone on and he's not had as many opportunities. I'm really surprised he never went back and went, you know what, you know, people still somewhat fondly remember this one. I'm going to go back and make a sequel. I did read there was also like a TV serial they tried to make as well.
I'm trying to find that now,
but. Ultimately nothing ever actually came to fruition with any of those things, you know.
Which is weird because the film has.
He's never really made sequels though. To be fair, actually, Neil Marshall's never even the he didn't have really have a part in The Descent 2. Like that was out because that was the deleted scene, alternate ending that was used for the American ones. Then that was taken over more by Americans.
But it was in his. Apparently, he spent about 6 years, kind of. Writing and coming up with the idea and finalising the script, trying to get funding.
Yeah.
So it's kind of odd that it never really went anywhere. And apparently in America, it
I mean, it's not a bad thing. A standalone horror is fine. Like there are many films that didn't need to have sequels.
And this is definitely and this is definitely one that doesn't need a sequel. I mean, I guess that kind of leads us on to the main question itself.
The big question.
I'm going to turn this light on quickly.
Now, we're not 100% sure of the top of this. I feel that the Descent is on our must-see horror film, but you're not so sure.
I'm not so sure. I need to consult the archives.
I think we will come to that, which is why I was going to kind of compare it to my thoughts on that one. But just in case it's on there, I will leave that as a possible question mark.
Yeah.
And I will rewatch that film. I might change my mind and go, that was dog shit.
Maybe.
Maybe I will. So I will just stick with this as a film. Now, again, because I knew of the Descent, I was thinking if any Neil Marshall film was going to make it onto 100 top C, I was thinking, The Descent seems the more likely kind of ones there. Dog Soldiers seems much more of a kind of cult film, that is very loved in cult films and is something that I think has become quite big and America has found it more in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah.
So it had a little bit more of a fan base than it maybe did in the early 2000s when it was first released. So I had, as I said, I had quite a link with this in my childhood. I remember really liking it and watching it lots of times on repeat, probably just in one weekend, and then seeing it on Channel 5 a million times after that.
Yeah.
And there were lots of characters I remember rooting for. There's lots of scenes that kind of etched into my brain. And I think it's a solid film, especially for a low budget film. I think it is a really solid werewolf film. It probably is one of my more preferred werewolf films because I can't always name that many that are that great. I find it's a genre that's very easy to do.
It's a shallow puddle, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very hard. You've got a few standouts, and those standouts are very good.
Those standouts are standouts, and then
there's a lot of bad werewolf
films.
It's very easy to do poorly. Again, some people might look at the practical effects in this and go oh, I don't like the look of the werewolves. I think they're some of the stronger werewolf designs we've had in film.
Yeah.
So in terms of werewolf films, then it would definitely be in the top 5. I think of werewolf films ever made for me personally. Is one of my preferred ones, but I don't think I'd put it on the top 100 horror films of all time.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd say it's a must-see horror in terms of the top 100. I do think it's a film that if you've never seen it, you should check it out. And I think it's a solid film, and it's an enjoyable film. It's got some great performances, but it is it's a straightforward, simple kind of creature feature. It's not anything that's going to blow your mind. It's not doing anything that a lot of other films similar before this and after this have not done as well. So I don't think it reinvents anything. I don't think it's like an original in that way. I don't think it was completely new. It's a great film in terms of a British horror, and it is a standout in terms of quite a lot of British horror films for some people. But I think overall there's just not quite enough to it that I would say I'd be yeah, that would go on my top 100 horrors of all time.
Yeah. Before I go to my thoughts, I will pop over to the social media lounge quickly. As we actually had...
We've done a social media
We have done a social media lounge. I was about to watch it and was like, I'll do the social media lounge. So you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at CMTH Podcast. The one we had today was from Flicks and Friends podcasts over there. So they said this movie fucking rips. The scariest werewolves put on film. The setting is amazing and the action is awesome. And you know, I've got a lot of love for Flicks and Friends podcasts, but I would say that I don't think this film is must-see horror either. I agree with you. I feel like it's a decent film. I don't think it's bad at all. I think it hits that spot, and it hits a very particular spot for me where, and this is going to sound strange, some people will get this, but I generally don't really watch TV. Usually everything's streaming now, right?
Yeah.
However, every now and then I love when I go to a hotel and I just watch TV.
Yeah.
And on the horror channel from 9 o'clock onwards, there's always some random rotation of these films from the late 90s, early 2000s. The one that I always seem to end up watching, and it's a film I love, I may have spoken about on the podcast, but it's Anaconda. You know,
Yeah.
It's just like a film that just fits into that kind of niche.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable and you'll watch it, but for me it's under a set of strange things.
It's great and it's really enjoyable and entertaining, but no one's going to be like, the original Anaconda, absolutely.
That's
the greatest horror film.
That's one of the greatest horror films of all time.
It falls into it is possibly one of the more entertaining, but it's not necessarily great.
No, and I feel like, in all honesty, I feel like it's massively overrated because I always, and like you said, a lot of the times when people are talking about the best werewolf
we need
films,
to do Anaconda, by the way.
oh yeah, obviously best film ever.
Loved it as a kid.
I still fucking love that film. Whenever they talk about, you know, werewolf films, a lot of people say Dog Soldiers is one of their favourites and Dog Soldiers was one of their best. But then again, you know, the werewolf films are unfortunately a shallow puddle. There's not really many of them that are truly great.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel like every time I watch this film, I'm watching a different film to everybody else, you know. It's enjoyable and it's good, but I feel like it's kind of largely forgettable. So no, you know, I'm at the door. It's coming to try and get into the club. I'm saying, look, no trainers, you know, no hats. You're not dressed appropriately. Yeah. Maybe, you know, if when it gets quiet at like 3 a.m. and it's kicking out time, maybe we'll let you in then for like a lukewarm grosh. But other than that, no, you have no women with you. We're not letting you in the club.
I think I was closer to putting it in than you are. I think from the film, but I've got more. I think I've got more nostalgia of loving this film, and maybe I can relate to some of the bits in this film more than maybe you relate to them in the same way. But I don't know. There's just a few things like it's not that I wouldn't recommend it to people. It's just me. It's this feature. What it comes down to, and it does boil down to it as saying 100. And by the end of this, we won't have 100 films actually put on this list. We'll have to.
We can do alternatives.
We'll need to add on films that we think should have been on this list. But of the ones that are on this list, it definitely wouldn't squeak into that top 100 for me. I don't think. I don't think there'd be werewolves on mine, to be honest. If I'm personally honest.
American Werewolf.
I believe we've already placed onto that list.
We probably have.
We might be wrong about that. We've definitely done it. So I would say American Werewolf is already firmly into that. That's for me one of the greatest horrors anyway. So you know, but how many other werewolf films I'm not so sure.
Who knows?
And there's some that I've never seen that I know are highly credited, like Ginger Snaps.
Ginger Snaps is good.
I haven't seen those ones of that, so I don't know how I'd feel about them. But then again, at the same time, a lot of people would be like, The Lost Boys is one of the greatest vampire films of all time, and I was not.
You weren't a fan. I thought it was okay. But yeah, I mean, well, come and let us know what you thought of Dog Soldiers, because, you know, the general consensus may be that it is must-see horror. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at CMTH Podcast. Come and let us know whether it's hashtag Dog Soldiers or whether it's hashtag Bog Soldiers. And make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a lovely review. We will see you next week. Take care. Goodbye.